G'day and happy Father's Day to fathers in Australia and New Zealand. Women worldwide are rightly rebelling against mistreatment, and there's talk of toxic masculinity. But for us men, change can be confusing. So when better to discuss such matters than Father's Day? What I'm saying applies to us men, but I'm sure that the women can also learn from it. Above all, we're all human. We all can learn to change. I've rescued women from violent relationships. One woman's taxi driver partner arrived home randomly and beat her if she wasn't at home. Her one freedom was TAFE classes, but he kept tabs on when she left and when she returned from there. She skipped classes and told her story to my late wife at abnd. Others who'd tried to help her escape were caught and beaten for trying. Her bags were ready when I arrived. I threw them into the car and we got away. With abnd help, she got to Melbourne. Soon she called Chris, my wife, to say she had become a Christian. I'm not saying there are no abusive women, but far more abusers are men. So you can understand why some people talk about toxic masculinity, but it's not true of every man, of course, by any means. However, we have all acted abusively at some time. It's how we are as humans. Smacking instead of talking, ignoring the needy when they appeal to us, criticising when encouragement was needed, lying to avoid acting and thereby crushing someone's hopes. Haven't we all done it and more? I'm not telling you off or claiming that we're all bad. We pastors are no nearer perfection than anyone else. I want us to see that we have experience. We know how the world works. We know our own hearts and understand that the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure, and who can know it? As people with experience and insight, we can address the situation. So don't apply your theology so strictly and firmly that you obey one part and neglect others. We are incapable of saving ourselves, but once saved, we are capable in the Lord of serving, capable of tackling the world and making a dent in evil. And fathers, we are here to make a difference. Whether we're physically or spiritually fathers, Jesus has saved us so we can work on changing the world. Of course, Jesus clearly said we must call no man on earth our Father, never exalt someone to the detriment of our calling. But didn't Paul speak of his Christian friends as his children in the Lord? Let's be spiritual fathers, that's good. Fathers are responsible. We're called to lead, not as bosses, but as protectors. Someone I worked with once told me, you can't leave here before I do because having you here is like having my dad at work. That's a kind of spiritual fatherhood. You care for someone and they know they can go to you for support or prayer. I played a role in her birth into the kingdom of God too. Men, we can all be fathers to someone. We can help correct what earthly fathers did wrong. We aren't involved in the stress and the sense of duty and all those other things that make natural fathers sometimes mistreat their children. We can step back, we can be fathers and then go home and know we will not be dragged from bed to deliver the 3 a.m. feed. If we've been through the whole process, if we've been the father of some child, we know those stresses and we can bring that experience to bear to encourage and assist someone else who is not our natural child. We can help someone along the way, as a good father does his children. And remember that children can be adults as well as toddlers. My children range from around 50 down to mid-40s. The world needs to change, and that change can start in us. 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14 is very familiar. It says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I'll hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. What's the first thing we have to do? It's to humble ourselves. God's blessing depends on our humility. Luke chapter 14, starting with verse 1 and then going on to verses 7 to 14 says, one Sabbath, When Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. It goes on. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honour at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, don't take the place of honour, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this person your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when the host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honoured in the presence of all the guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, don't invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives or your rich neighbours. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you'll be blessed. Although they can't repay you, you'll be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Here's Jesus' image of humility in our passage. He attends dinner at a Pharisee's home. People are jostling for the best places at the table, so he comments on it. He asks them how they would feel, and it challenges us. How would you feel? You arrive for a wedding feast, but there are no place cards to say who sits where. You see the other guests and decide, "I'm not on the brides and grooms table, but I'm a deacon, I'm a community leader, and these other people are just ordinary people from around town. They were probably invited just to be kind." So you leave the top table for the brides and grooms' families and go to the top of the second table. But Jesus says, what if the bride's father invited the mayor and the local member and wants them where you're sitting? How do you feel then? It's embarrassing to be asked to move and make space. You thought you were pretty important, and suddenly everyone sees you aren't so important after all. If we learn humility, we won't be humiliated. Again, imagine being at this same feast and you say, "I'm unimportant, the others are more important." So you sit at the table near the door with a draft on your back and waiters buzzing past all night. How do you feel when the host comes and says, "Hey, you're a special guest, you don't belong here, come up higher"? Everyone sees the person from the least important place being lifted up. Jesus says, when you're invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you'll be honoured in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. And the reason he gives is in verse 11, "For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Jesus wants us to go even further. One of the most divisive things we do, and it happens everywhere but shouldn't happen in a church, is that without thinking, we only socialise with the people who can socialise with us. It's like the kind of group which always has lunch together but never expands to include a newcomer. What may have begun with the aim of including the outsider becomes exclusive. Even a rotating supper club might always involve the same people. Jesus says, don't always invite only the people who can invite us back. He says, when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame and the blind, and you'll be blessed because they can't repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. But what has this to do with where I started out? In some ways it may seem so basic it hardly needs to be said. In fact, it must be said, because it's not basic at all. It was such an explosive idea that people thought Christians were mad or despicable because they practiced humility. Humility is connected to altruism, to care for others. Rats practice altruism. If a rat is trapped, another rat will risk its own safety to rescue it. Did you ever see a video clip of the monkey that had an electric shock at an Indian railway station? It fell into ditch water between the tracks. Another monkey leapt into the ditch and dragged its friend out. Then the rescue monkey shook and patted and prodded its unconscious friend until it came around. That's altruism. The healthy monkey rescued the injured one. Many animals are altruistic, but there's something beyond altruism. The rat or the monkey rescues its own kind. Next time the tables might be turned and the rescuer will need to be rescued. It's altruistic self-interest. Jesus points beyond basic animal altruism to an even more advanced quality of humility, and that's where it becomes hard. Historians debate how Christianity spread so quickly. Was it healing or bold preaching? What about the power of humility? In the ancient world, humility seemed crazy. Slaves, labourers, the poor, they were contemptible and should be humble, but not free men. The person of worth was expected to promote himself all the time. He was expected to show how important and valuable he considered himself. And Christians undermined that. They made a Jewish concept universal. The Jews knew that a hard heart destroys. In Psalm 81 we read, "But my people did not listen to my voice. Israel would not submit to me, so I gave them over to their stubborn hearts to follow their own counsels. Oh, that my people would listen to me, that Israel would walk in my ways. Then I would quickly subdue their enemies and turn my hand against their foes." Jesus emphasised it even more firmly. Christians must be humble. Remember the man I mentioned earlier? He was beating his partner. He was pathologically committed to proving he was a big man. His sickness was based in pride. Having a woman to control made him feel big. Another man chased his daughter with a knife. At heart, he was weak, threatened by a daughter who stood up to him. His pride threatened the whole family. But eventually that man did humble himself. It took him several years until he apologised to his daughter and invited her back home. Things changed because he swallowed his pride. He humbled himself and became vulnerable. Men, fathers, brothers, this is for us today because it's often hard for us to be humble. Women often learn humility early. We men learn to be tough, to stand tall and never to bend. We used to mock the humble boy, call him a sissy, a girl. It's offensive to women who are often stronger than we men, and it's offensive to anyone who holds his strength in check, who doesn't retaliate, who depends on God's justice. We men need to be sure we're committed to humility. Think of the humble people you know. Most of us know how to be humble, but we can learn more. The more conscious of it we are, the more we can show others the way. The world needs men of humility, not just of action. We can lead in renewing our churches and in showing the world there are better ways. We can be fathers to a new world. A wise Jew wrote, "The beginning of human pride is to forsake the Lord. The heart has withdrawn from its maker. The Lord overthrows the thrones of rulers and enthrones the lowly in their place." Pride was not created for human beings, or violent anger for those born of women. We can contribute to creating a renewed world filled with God's glory. It begins when we, as God's people, humble ourselves and pray and seek God's face. It begins by reviving the church, and that transforms our world. We can't wait for children to do it. It's our task today. Let's commit to doing it. Amen. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. There's a button below.